All right, what's up, Wootrade community? We're back with another video in our Let's Talk Liquidity series. Today is the first time we've gone outside of the project itself. Recently, if you've been following, a lot of the community has been placing their Woo tokens into DeFi. And in DeFi right now, the biggest liquidity pool is currently Bancor. So that's why I was keen to get on a call. Today, we're joined by Mark from Bancor and Nate from Bancor. Of course, that will all be in the description, so there's no point in me talking about it. But maybe, maybe we could jump right into it. Mark or Nate, you can give us some background on yourselves and then Bancor.
Sure. Mark, you want to go ahead?
Nate, would you like to go first? Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, first, we're honored, I think, to be the first people that you're speaking to outside of the project. So thank you so much for that invitation. But yeah, so my name is Mark. I'm not a finance native. I come from the physical sciences. I completed my PhD in organic chemistry. I did my first postdoctoral appointment in California at UCI, and I was actually a chemistry professor there for 2 years before coming back to Australia and picking up a research position with the Commonwealth Science and Industrial Research Organization, sorry, CSIRO, which is the organization that invented Wi-Fi. And so I was there for 2 years, and during 2020, I was supposed to be traveling to Germany to complete sort of the last leg of my research program under Peter Seeberger at the Max Planck Institute. And I think it was literally sort of, I think it was 3 days out of my my planned trip to Berlin when Australia first closed its borders to international travel. And I ended up basically canceling, that whole research effort. And so in the 6 months that I had while in lockdown and with virtually nothing to work on, I sort of, I think as many others did around me, sort of took to cryptocurrency and DeFi, and this was around about the time when DeFi summer was happening, and so I sort of taught myself the ropes for that, and I became very active in the Bancor version 2.1 DAO when it first launched in September, October of last year. And then by Christmas, I was collaborating with the Bancor founders on a new sort of credit system that eventually became the Bancor Vortex. And then I was offered a full-time gig consulting for Bancor in January of this year, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow, I've been on a number of phone calls with Mark, including some of the community calls. I had no idea about your background. I never thought to ask. I thought you were just one of us, DGen Chads like the rest of us. But all right, why don't you go ahead, Nate?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm like probably more in the DGen Chad camp. I've been working in crypto since late 2017. Started my career actually as a financial journalist in New York. Back probably that was 10 years ago, covering when crowdfunding first started showing up, so a lot of the regulation around new financial technologies, and moved on to learn a little bit of coding and joined a bunch of mobile startups, went through a few exits there, discovered ETH in 2017, joined the Bancor team in late 2017, and then have been with the team since then. I work on growth, and it's been a pretty wild ride. Bancor, I would say, is kind of known and was the first DeFi protocol, and launched at a time before DeFi was in our vernacular. And it's been pretty awesome to ride that wave and to see things evolve so much over the past few years.
Yeah, I definitely remember 2017, 2018. And then you had things like IDEX, and then obviously Bancor was on EOS at the time. And that was actually a bit of a pain point for me getting into the Bancor community. But if things had been different, I might have been involved with them more early on. But either way, it's
Well,
been,
so yeah,
go
so
ahead.
Bancor has been like an ETH native protocol. It launched on ETH and has always had most of its usage on ETH. I would say EOS was like a sort of proof of concept just to prove that the protocol could go cross chain. And it was sort of really early experimentation with that in 2018 that we set up a sort of bridge that allowed both ETH and the EOS networks to communicate with one another. Now that was a super kind of interesting practice, and the whole cross-chain narrative has changed a lot since then. But yeah, it's definitely always been an ETH-centric platform, and I don't really see that changing anytime soon.
Okay, that's interesting. We can get into that a little bit later. Let's
Yeah.
real quickly for people who are watching, how can the Woo token holders really get involved with the Bancor ecosystem? We have over 20 million in liquidity, I think, right now, or somewhere around there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Bancor introduces a pretty interesting paradigm where previously, as a token, you would work with professional market makers and have them provide liquidity to your token on like a centralized exchange. And then we started to see more liquidity provision on DEXes, and it really allows the sort of community to own the liquidity when you're holding just Woo in your idle in your wallet and you want to get yield on it. It's a pretty high yielding activity to be a market maker. And AMMs, which Bancor invented in 2017 and have evolved a lot since then, allow really anyone in the community to provide liquidity to an AMM liquidity pool and then earn those yields. And it's a cool thing because as a Woo holder, you can decide, do I want to trade on a centralized exchange where those yields are going to a professional market maker, or do I want to trade on an AMM pool where actually the yields are being distributed to the holders of the token that provide liquidity? And what we found with a lot of, like, I'd say diamond-handed communities is they want to participate in these yield opportunities and want to provide liquidity to AMM pools. But until now, it was quite a risky endeavor. You had to split two tokens. So you had to provide both ETH and Woo or whatever paired asset. And then you were exposed to this risk that if both of the assets diverged in price, you would suffer impermanent loss, where you're effectively, if Woo is going up, the pool is selling off Woo and you're accumulating the paired asset. And so Bancor came along with a single-sided liquidity pool that allows you to just provide Woo. You don't have to provide ETH, or you don't have to provide the paired asset, and you're fully protected against impermanent loss if you're in the pool for 100 days or more. So once you get to that 100-day mark, any impermanent loss that occurs on the pool, you're protected against that. So you can always be sure that you pulled out the same amount of Woo that you staked, plus trading fees that accumulate in the pool, and also liquidity mining rewards that you get from Bancor protocol. And hopefully when we launch dual liquidity mining with you guys, also in the Woo token. So I think it's provided a sort of simpler, safer liquidity provision experience for Woo holders. And it's just, if you're holding Woo, you want to get high yield on it. You don't want to be exposed to too much risk. And I think that's really why we've seen like a very strong token community. We also saw similar behavior from the Link community. So communities where there's really strong token holders, they don't want to give out the yields to professional market makers. They want to get yield on their own assets. So it's really been like an awesome fit for Bancor and Woo. We've seen the pool, I think recently it was like one of the top 5, if not top 3 volume pools, which means it's generating tons of fees, great APR for providers. I think you guys were approved for liquidity mining rewards, so you're getting those APR from those BNT rewards too. And yeah, it's been amazing to see the two token communities really come together. So yeah, that's kind of the, I think, brief context of the sort of collaboration between the communities.
So just to follow up a little bit on what Nate was saying, if you are a Woo token holder, honestly, it is the competition is fierce to try and get space into that pool. As a part of the the risk management system that the Bancor DAO has to operate, we don't allow the pools to become infinitely deep. We do need to manage the size of these pools and make sure that the protocol can effectively offer impermanent loss insurance against the token's price appreciating very quickly, which is something that certainly the Woo token is constantly threatening to do. So we are watching that pool very closely. However, having looked at it, we are confident that the volume on that pool can justify it to be slightly deeper than it currently is. So if you are holding a Woo token right now, certainly you want to pay attention to the Bancor Twitter account, join us on Discourse or on Discord, get in our Telegram groups, and keep an eye out for for the effective liquidity cap on that pool being raised imminently. There's already a discussion going on in the DAO as to how much we should raise it by, and I'm expecting that to move to a vote sometime next week. And on top of that, if you are a Woo holder and you also happen to be a BNT holder, you can actually create room in the pool for yourself by contributing BNT to that pool. So this basically removes part of the minted amount from the pool and helps the protocol to sort of create more organic space. This is part of sort of, I would say, one of the democratic processes by which BNT holders can decide how deep the pools get, which is by contributing BNT to it themselves. So if you have BNT and you are trying to get into the Woo pool, you can actually just add BNT yourself and then try and add Woo in a second transaction after that.
Yeah, is there a chance that you'll add the BNT and then somebody else will sneak in there with some Woo and fill up the space?
Unfortunately, yeah.
There always is that chance. Yeah, space sniping. Yeah, honestly, the reality is that Bancor is the best place for liquidity providers anywhere in the industry right now. And so, yeah, space sniping is certainly a behavior that we've noticed, and we are working with the community to try and create better ways around this. But I think as with any hot club or something like that, it's kind of a first in, best dressed, first served sort of situation, at least for now. But as the protocol gains momentum, as the protocol gains in size, as we onboard more and more tokens, the overall risk that the protocol is experiencing with having very large pools keeps moving down over time. As we're just as we're whitelisting at least one new project every week now, it's just a matter of time before we can start to significantly increase the space in all of these pools, and especially the ones that are performing as well as Woo is.
I think I saw for the first time since I've been at Bancor, someone was like fudding Bancor and Woo to open up space in the pool. They're like, oh, you should totally remove your Woo from Bancor. It's like, you got to get it off there. And it was clearly an attempt to try to open up space in the pool. So that was pretty funny to see.
Yeah, it's funny. You guys have like your own words now, like space sniping. Like this is just the whole thing is evolving. It's really quite cool to see. All right, I want to talk. We can come back to that a little bit later. But you guys are like experts in DeFi, which helps. Like one of the reasons, like our background is more on the centralized trading side. So whenever we hit a conversation with Bancor, it's always great to hear some insights on the DeFi. So like recently we've had a few new protocols with Uniswap v3, then Curve released their v2, and then Balancer. I don't know if they've released it or not, but they're doing some interesting things with their updated version. Is there anything you're seeing out there that's really interesting and that might shape the direction of the DEX and AMM space?
Yeah, honestly, I think that everyone active in the industry right now is all feeding off each other. So really after DeFi summer, it was pretty clear that there were a bunch of different, projects that were sort of targeting different elements of the same ecosystem. We saw, the vampire attack on Uniswap that the sushi swap, protocol performed. And that was really sort of one of the first DEXes to offer a really competitive yield farming product. This is before Uni, I think, even had its own token. Bancor obviously was released with the impermanent loss protection and single-sided staking, which I think quite thoroughly delineated it from some of the other DEX options out there. We saw Curve roll out with the stable-to-stable swaps and the effective liquidity amplification of its bonding curve. And then, as things continued, as you point out, there was Balancer V2 with its sort of asset management system. There was Uniswap V3 with its concentrated liquidity, which was actually very similar to Bancor's version 2, except without the impermanent loss protection. And now we've got Curve V2, which is concentrated liquidity with volatile pairs as well. And yeah, so I want to point out that there are other projects like Thorchain as well, which have also been inspired by Bancor's product, right? So Thorchain has been quite vocal and transparent in the fact that its impermanent loss protection strategy is modeled 100% after what Bancor is doing. And we shouldn't be surprised to see probably more impermanent loss protection products come out inspired by what Bancor has innovated, precisely because I think that liquidity provision from a retail standpoint is probably contingent on something like this existing. I really don't think that liquidity providers will continue to take risk and pay fees to platforms for the privilege of doing so, especially if they're putting up 100% of the capital. So I do think the impermanent loss protection thing, it ought to catch on very quickly. I'll be worried for projects that don't pick it up. And at the same time, you should see that Bancor is also, while we were developing that part of the ecosystem, we're watching what Uniswap and Curve and Balancer are doing. And so I think we're all going to be deriving inspiration from each other. I think that we're starting to see what all of the different ingredients are going to look like. And over the coming years and decades as DeFi develops, I'm convinced that a lot of the top projects today are going to look more and more similar over time. So yeah, we are certainly watching with great interest. We study V3. We talk to liquidity providers on Uniswap V3 all the time. Every time Curve releases something, our economics and product team meets to talk about it. And honestly, we're generally huge fans of everything that everyone is doing. I think our community gets it has this very zealous rivalry, right, with other projects, especially the long-term Bancor community members who remember, back with Bancor's ICO that we were the first AMM, and then to sort of get overshadowed by Uniswap when the Ethereum Foundation released the grant for that project to be developed. I think that they did take that sort of personally, and they have this huge animosity towards all other DEXs, right, that aren't Bancor. But for the core team, we're actually very friendly with other members in our development sphere. I'm actually on regular meetings with the Balancer simulations teams, and we discuss open questions in DEXs all the time, and how to build better simulations, and what a more effective exchange is going to look like. So yeah, it's not as as cutthroat, I think, as people think it is behind the scenes. It's actually a very collaborative ecosystem, and I actually think that that's one of the reasons why DeFi is going to succeed. But yeah, we're all sharing the same ideas, and we're all watching what each other is doing, and most of the code is open source. I do think that you shouldn't be surprised to see that Bancor start to borrow different elements from other projects, especially the most successful ones, and that those projects are going to be borrowing elements from Bancor at the same time.
Yeah, we're in such a phase of creative destruction with this primitive AMMs that, you know, everyone's firing on all cylinders in terms of new designs, new experiments, and really, you know, taking full kind of swings at coming up with something that's novel and innovative. I think we definitely had an aha moment with the release of V2.1. You know, as we mentioned, Bancor's been around since 2017, and then V2.1 was launched in late 2020. And these two core features, single-sided exposure, so being exposed to just one token, and IL protection, we felt were just kind of killer features that really serve, you know, this idea of passive liquidity provision. Whereas when IL is in the picture, it really requires some management on behalf of the LP. If they think, you know, their tokens are going to moon, they might want to pull some liquidity so they can get that upside exposure to the tokens. If you have a design like Uni V3, the price ranges, you know, the token might constantly be going out of a price range and become inactive, during which point you're holding 100% of one asset. And so you might want to update the price range to not be exposed to IL during those periods. And so it's kind of created somewhat of, I think, a bifurcation in the liquidity industry within AMMs, where you're starting to see products designed for those who want to be active on their stakes and who might lean towards professional market makers and those that existed on order book based exchanges, you know, like Coinbase and Binance, and or who might have done order book based DEX exchange and 0x. And then you have just your token holders who have a long-term view on a token or a long-term holding, and they're not constantly wanting to sort of check the stake and monitor it. And so it's just kind of like an alternative to holding the token in their wallet. I might as well hold it in an AMM. And I think the product market fit that we've seen with that since launch of V2.1 has really turned us into these kind of passive liquidity maximalists, where there's like we sort of see the importance of having this product that allows folks to just sit back and hold and provide utility to the token community they care about, instead of acting as this sort of mercenary capital that hops from like farm to farm, to really, you know, partner with the project and other liquidity providers to build these pools where your yields are going to the holders and the people that are most committed to the project, and it's sort of longest term holders, as opposed to, like I said, these professional market making firms or, you know, people that may not be as committed to the project. So I think that was definitely an aha moment that we really wanted to lean into, the sort of passive liquidity provision. And it's not just limited to retail. These are also a lot of institutions that have assets that they want yield on, but don't necessarily want to compete with, you know, active market making firms. And so Bancor has really evolved into the solution for really the simplest staking, you know, within AMM pools. And yeah, so I think we've really leaned into that, and we're excited to expand, you know, the functionality even further in our version 3. We think we've discovered something very powerful within AMMs that will allow them to generate even higher APYs for LPs, still without sacrificing this passive liquidity experience.
Yeah, the passive side is huge. I mean, like you said, people are like, setting alerts to figure out when like the liquidity space will open up. But it is like, I mean, the rewards we've seen on the Bancor pools have been anywhere from 10%. It spikes over 40% on a a high volume day, which is really incredible considering there's no risk, presuming you're willing to stake for over 100 days on Bancor. Another interesting point that Mark, you mentioned about other people copying Bancor, and someone that I trust is pretty smart in this space. He once said, you can be smart and still copy people. As long as you're copying Bancor, then you're being one of the smart ones. So we've seen that a lot, and that's quite interesting.
Well, we often remind ourselves, not the person who did it first, the person who does it best. So
right.
I don't think we're ever resting on our laurels that just because you started it, you have to stay extremely innovative, constantly be shipping new product, and like I said, swing for the fences. And I think that's something that we're always prepared to do.
Right. Okay. I have one more question on the general DeFi space. Like Bancor has been pretty conservative in terms of not jumping from BSC to Heco to Polygon for now. Is this a trend that you can see yourself staying kind of centered around Ethereum? What is your ideas there?
I think that our CTO has said it best, and that's that Ethereum is still extremely well established. It's probably the only chain still to have decentralized wealth on it. I was in a DeFi meeting of sorts recently with a bunch of different projects, and a leader from one of the biggest Ethereum projects that there is was commenting on cross-chain implementations, and said that the reason why they are still remaining Ethereum focused is precisely because even with some of these other faster chains coming out, almost all of the capital on those other chains is coming from a singular source. And that makes those chains inherently more susceptible to dramatic violent changes. And so until that's no longer the case, it's basically going to be Ethereum for them for the long term. For Bancor, I'd say it's slightly more nuanced than that. We are, as Nate spoke about earlier in the interview, we have been on other chains before. We went to EOS in 2018, and I think that's actually was a really important learning curve for the team. Right, I wasn't a part of the Bancor, effort at that time. But it's something that we've spoken a lot about in our core meetings. And I think that it's almost like Bancor is old enough now that it's kind of been there, done that with new chains, right? People are treating these layer 2 scaling solutions and the release of BSC and Solana and other chains as being something new. But honestly, the industry has already been here before, and these fast chains, they kind of rose out of nothing, was attracted a huge amount of users, and then kind of fizzled out, right? And that was really the story with EOS. And so when the layer 2 hype and BSC and other things were kind of rising to prominence, the Bancor dev team was like, oh, not this again. We've been in that position of having to commit a huge amount of dev resources because the overheads to moving on to another chain are not small. You're then in the position of having to maintain product on 2 different chains with its own user base and its own development issues. And so I think that this time around, though, let's just wait and see what happens. We don't know we don't know which of the layer 2 scaling solutions is going to be the one that survives. Maybe all three of the major competitors are going to survive. Maybe only one of them will. Maybe none of them will. We can afford to be, the second or third or fourth to release on one of these chains. And we believe that the product is still strong enough that when we do decide to go there, that we're going to be able to easily compete with a lot of these tiny little projects that are, are launching competing DEXes there. And I think that, this is kind of serving us pretty well. In a recent community call, our CTO said that really the problem with launching on a brand new chain, something like Polygon or Arbitrum when it's ready, or Optimism when it's ready, is that all new platforms in software have bugs. And if you are launching on that platform, you're going to inherit those bugs even before you know what they are. And so it kind of is the more risk averse thing to let other projects kind of launch their projects on there. And then sort of, it's almost like it's creating its own bug bounty, right? The more TBL that you have on Polygon, the more likely it is that there isn't going to be some, project ending exploit on there, because, as the TBL grows, the financial incentive for a hacker to discover those bugs becomes so attractive that if it basically hasn't been exploited yet, it's very unlikely to ever be exploited. And so that's really our approach. We don't think that there's any value to just rushing in. We've got, we think that we have a strong enough product that when we are convinced that these chains have proven their value, that when we do go there, we're going to have no trouble finding traction. Yeah. But there's other questions as well, especially with regards to the beer. Yeah, sorry, Nate, do you want to go ahead?
Well, I mean, I would say we're not taking a wait and see approach. It's more of like a build and see, in that as the L2s and other chains are continuing to evolve, those ecosystems are continuing to evolve, we're building our V3 right now very rapidly, and it's all hands on deck there. Once V3 is close to being deployed or is deployed, we'll then rapidly deploy it on an L2 or another chain. So, because the bottom line is, at least now, if you look at the top 50 tokens on, by volume in crypto, they're not all ERC20 tokens. There's a lot of massive tokens with massive volume that are in very high demand with lots of big communities. And there's a lot of communities that want to get yield on those tokens by providing them to a liquidity pool. So there's no doubt in my mind that the top 50 coins, within the next year will all be provided to an AMM in some capacity, and will all be traded within AMMs at a very high volume. And we really want to be the go-to place for that to happen. So once V3 is built, we think it'll kind of further distinguish Bancor's core AMM from its competitors, and then we can rapidly deploy it on an L2 or another chain and capture market share there quite fast. And ultimately, we haven't ruled out also building Bancor's own chain and having that as a effective mechanism for having a lot of implementations on several different chains. I think there's no question, from these high gas climates that we had, I think it was, it looks like we have less of a minute on the Zoom. Do you think it's gonna keep going, or?
I think it's gonna cut out. I might have to send a new link.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Go Bancor.
Let me send a new link, because I have one more question that we can wrap this up with. And
okay,
then I'll,
sure.
Yeah, so I'm gonna end it right now.
All right, no worries.
Again. Nice. All right, yeah, sorry about that, guys. My free Zoom account cut out. Typical amateur hour here. Before we wrap up, I mean, I really want to know more about, how Wootrade, the Woo community can, grow tighter ties and get more value, I guess, from the Bancor community. I mean, what sort of things there would be to look forward to? So kind of a multifaceted question, but you guys seem pretty skilled at answering these questions, so I'll let you roll with it.
Yeah, sure. I'm super excited for dual liquidity mining to finally launch on Bancor. this way, the LPs can get trader fees, they can get rewards in BNT, and then if Woo launches an incentive program on the pool, it can get rewards in Woo too. And unlike most AMMs, you're not having to subtract the IL from your mining rewards as an LP, so they can be a lot more profitable. So that'll be awesome. I think in general, spreading the word and just educating. I think we're at a stage where a lot of people in the industry don't even know what liquidity provision is or don't know what AMMs are. So like even single-sided liquidity and exposure and impermanent loss protection, like even that's going too far to start things off. So to just like have the Woo community and the broader community understand what AMMs are and how you can have sort of community-owned liquidity where yields are going to the holders. And then also, I think we see a lot of overlap at some point, some sort of integration with Woo and the trading technology. We know you guys have like an extensive background in trading, and I think there's a lot of interesting integrations that our communities can pull off together that really deepen the sort of collaboration there. And so those would be my top ones, and just in general for Woo holders to use the pool. Keeping in mind that those yields, every time there's a fee generated in the pool, that's going to fellow Woo holders who are staking there. So I think it's really cool that there's a lot of trading volume against it. A lot of people are turning to Bancor as their first stop for trading, and that's generating those super high APR numbers. So I'm really psyched to see those continue to go up and to the right and to be sustainable forms of yield.
Mark?
So yeah, a couple of things there. So if you want to buy the Woo token, I'm pretty sure that Bancor is the best place to do it right now. I think it's the deepest source of liquidity anywhere in the ecosystem. And so if you've got a relatively large trade, the spread that you're getting on centralized exchanges is likely to be a lot worse than the slippage that you're getting on the Bancor pool. And this is one of the things that we're going to continue to make better, right? As those Woo liquidity providers continue to stake their BNT rewards in the pool, that's going to open up more Woo space for more Woo tokens to come in, and that's just going to keep improving the depth, and that's going to keep improving the trading experience for people that are actively trading the Woo token. And as we, as I said earlier in our conversation, the community is already discussing increasing the co-investment to grow the Woo pool at an even faster rate. And so yeah, we're really hoping to annex the Woo trader community, people that actually want to swap this token on a regular basis, or even just accumulate it over time. Right? We want Bancor to be the number one place to service the needs of those individuals. And in terms of collaborating with the Woo team, we know that you guys are predominantly makers right now, not so much takers. If that ever pivots to the point where you are going to do more active taking, I am very interested to talk to you about plugging directly into the Bancor pools, especially as we move into V3 and what that's going to look like. If you ever need to, use an active trading strategy to try and keep the fees at zero for Woo token holders, I think that you should see the Bancor DEX as being one of the ways to do that. There are other active market makers already that effectively perform counter trades on Bancor when they're actively making markets on centralized exchanges. So basically, they set their price on a centralized exchange slightly higher than the Bancor pools, using the Bancor pools essentially as an oracle. And so every time they make a sale on outside the ecosystem, they perform the opposite buy on the Bancor pools. So there are things that you can do as an active market maker that involve the Bancor pools. And as our token economy continues to grow, as the inventory grows, I think that functionality is only going to continue to improve. But as you and I have already spoken about in previous conversations, Ben, not in this call, but we are learning from you guys, right? When I recall vividly this conversation where we were asking you guys what's your favorite product on DeFi to use as an active maker, and you guys were like Dodo. Dodo is our go-to because of the active pricing mechanism that it affords us, and that's kind of a necessary tool when you are making markets as large as we are. And this is the kind of thing, these are the conversations that I really need to have with people such as yourself, because that's going to influence the types of products that Bancor develops. I think as as Bancor continues to represent the entire industry, right? At the moment, we have a very laser focus on this passive liquidity provision, but in the future, I think that we are going to have to start to sort of bleed over into the sorts of demographics that Uniswap V3 is catering to and what Dodo is catering to. And I think that in the longer term, or at least in the medium to long term, that's the sort of collaboration that I see being the most fruitful between the Bancor and Woo projects, right? Is you guys telling us what do you want, right? What is it that other what is it about the products that you're using every day that Bancor doesn't have, and how can we build those in a better way to make it more usable and more useful for active market makers such as yourself? So that's kind of where I see our collaboration going. And I'm super excited that we have your token whitelisted, and it's the deepest liquidity source, and that there's more than just a sort of an industrial collaboration. I really feel like it's got more of a grassroots kind of community centric flavor to it, and that's kind of why I'm so interested to continue working together.
Yeah, I'm super excited to share some of the features that are coming out in Bancor V3. I think there's a lot of characteristics about the Woo community and token that make it a kind of perfect launch partner token for that, and a lot of integrations also on the trading side in particular that I think will make a lot of sense for a deeper integration. So super excited to be in touch with you guys and have such a close relationship between the communities when V3 comes out.
Yeah, we're very interested to see what that is, what it's going to look like. Obviously, like you said, we're doing a lot of the maker in CeFi. With the taker in CeFi, it's quite interesting. It's not as beneficial, I think, to the protocol. Obviously, there's fees, but with the taker strategy, you tend to be collecting profits for yourself away from the pool. Right. Whereas like a maker strategy, you actually increase the liquidity on the pool. It improves you profit yourself, obviously, but you're also improving the protocol. So it tends to be more of a two-way street. Obviously, like with Uniswap V3, there's some things that make it not as flexible. And with obviously Ethereum, the block times, they leave you exposed if you're trying to quote a really tight range, and then you have to leave that quote available for 2 minutes. That's one of the big challenges, not to mention just inconsistent gas fees make it hard to build something sustainable. So that's, we're all also very interested, in the things that you guys are doing, and not just from hey, we can list the Woo token here and, Woo, rally our community, but to build like something sustainable and long-term. And I'm converted myself. Like I started staking on the Woo. I started staking on the BNT side, and then next thing I started voting as well. And I'm encouraging other people to vote on the Bancor side, and kind of educating them about the benefits of being involved active as a DAO. This is a direction that Wootrade's also heading towards, is being more decentralized. So, we're learning a lot from you guys as well. The bumps and the good things as well. But it's been interesting to see.
And now, actually, I sort of have a question for you. For you, Ben, on that. I'm kind of curious. We see a sort of like path of a lot of LPs coming in the door who, are Woo token holders, want yield on their assets. And then we often wonder, what's the overlap between these holders who want yield and also are going to trade against the pool too. And, converting a lot of people, you said, you start as an LP, and then you made your way into sort of started voting. And we wonder, like, how much overlap do you think there is between LPs and sort of, you know, active traders of Woo? And like, how do we sort of ensure that a lot of the Woo community is not only LPing with us, but also like trading their Woo and any other tokens with Bancor?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say just Woo. Like I would say any particular token, but our community is quite interesting because it sprung up so quick, and it came from a couple of, like you mentioned, Chainlink earlier, like also some like VeChain. We saw a lot of people from that community, and just other ones in DeFi, all just springing together. So everyone has a very diverse background. I don't think there's any like you'd say, oh, they're traders, or you know, they're stakers. But you know, we actually had that problem a few months ago where people were using Woo as collateral on our CeFi platform to trade, and then it caused some cascading liquidations when the price crashed. So I think in general, people are very open to trading Woo. And obviously one of our strong narratives is the trading side. So I think, I don't think that will be a problem. I think people are very interested in trading. And you know, getting them out of their comfort zone, getting them exposed to DeFi and understanding how it works. I think that will keep going, and especially if the transaction fees continue to decrease, which they have been doing on Ethereum, and if the next version of the Bancor, if it does show up on layer 2s, I mean, then it could be, you know, resemble more of the CeFi trading experience. I think they'd be very open to that. But it's something we want to push, right? We want to push the whole, not just like the diamond hands mentality, like just buy the Woo token and stake, but you know, an active, healthy DeFi ecosystem, you know, it relies on everything, and that's something we're keen to push.
Cool.
So that's it. Did you say that what a big part of the community makeup when it was generated was VeChain holders?
We had some early KOL influencers from there, so yeah, a lot of them did come from there.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. But just out of curiosity, like, so obviously the Chainlink community was a big one. Bancor community was a big one.
Yeah.
I didn't know about VeChain. Are there any other sort of big overlaps between other token communities that you think stand out?
I think those would be the main ones, but because we're so platform agnostic, that we're listing tokens from other platforms, kind of like we do with BNT. You know, it's very easy for us to integrate. So like we're definitely picking up a lot of, you know, people, even some from like the BSC community, which was quite interesting because they tend to be more, you know, out for the really unsustainable yields. But we've noticed some of them coming in. Right now, you know, we're also launching on Polygon, so there's some interest coming from there. But yeah, I don't think we want to be this kind of like melting pot of different communities, which is what DeFi should be anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I guess I'm just looking for. I'm always looking for sort of convenient kissing points between different token communities. So, you know, I think one of the reasons why we were interested in Woo straight away is because a lot of BNT holders and Chainlink holders were already, you know, Woo enthusiasts. And so there's this kind of interesting, you know, the way that the Bancor protocol grows is really organic in the sense that people will hold, you know, one token and then they'll say, you know, I've got this other token that I'm really interested in, and you know, let me introduce you to the team and let's get it whitelisted and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I've got to look into VeChain a little bit, but, you know, this might be another token community that if they're already super interested in Woo, you know, maybe that's, you know, maybe we're neglecting them a little bit, and we should find out what else do they hold other than Woo, and, you know, what other projects would they be interested in trading more. And, you know, just I like to learn about the different demographics, right? It's growing so quickly that it is kind of, you know, it's hard to keep track of. But that's a community that I didn't necessarily know that was a part of our circles now. So I need to pay more attention.
Yeah, we can definitely share some info if we see some communities that are looking strong and would be good candidates for whitelisting.
And I see
please do.
The Woo pool is, at one point it was top 5. I think now it looks like it's top 10 by volume on Bancor.
It got to It got to second place
wow.
volume just a few days ago.
Now we're at like 7% APR on fees, and then 60% on the BNT side for mining rewards, and 9% on the Woo side for mining rewards. So if you're holding Woo and stake it now, you're looking at like 15% APR, and like you said, we've seen that go up, spike a lot on certain days. So it's awesome to see it's still one of our strongest.
Yeah, and we're gonna keep working on increasing the volume there. We're still very small. Like I think we still only have like 8,000 holders on Ethereum. So probably about half of those are on the Bancor pool. So yeah, things are going fast. But I think we should. It's getting to the end of the hour. This went pretty long, but it was really informative. So thanks for joining us, guys. And I look forward to keeping in very close contact.
Thanks.
It was our pleasure, Ben.
Thanks, Nate.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.